Hey, what's happening, guys? This is James, and welcome to the first edition of Stare Down MMA TV. We've decided to do a couple of different things for 2012, and it looks like we're going to go ahead and attach some videos to some of our feature articles that we'll be publishing this year. As we all know, that 2011 was probably the biggest year in the history of mixed martial arts. Tons of developments, tons of news. Uh, I'd have to say that the Strike Force acquisition by the UFC was probably near the top of the list for overall developments in the community, probably following the deal with Fox. You know, when they got the major broadcasting deal with the network, that was, I think, the biggest moment of 2011. But anyway, we all know that from the Strike Force acquisition, they started to import some of the fighters over from that organization into the UFC, and I believe the first one, as far as like marquee guys, was Jake Shields, who ended up fighting George St. Pierre in July for the title, and took him 5 rounds. It was actually a really great fight. Followed by the Nick Diaz debacle when they brought him over. They made him give up his Strike Force title. He was supposed to fight St. Pierre right out of the gate. That ended up that didn't happen because he didn't show up for a couple of press conferences, and then St. Pierre ended up hurt anyway. Diaz ended up fighting BJ Penn. That was awesome. Diaz made a great and a very loud statement during that fight that he was there to fight, and had he actually fought St. Pierre, it might have been something to see. I really hope that fight happens in the future. I mean, I guess we'll see. We know that he has to fight Condit coming up here, so we'll see how that one pans out. But anyway, I'd say Alistair Overeem was the other big name that they brought over from the Strike Force organization. He's the primary topic of the article that I wrote this evening. That with all the news that happened in 2011, there was a slight, or I would actually almost call it a major detail that kind of slid under my radar. I don't know how it snuck by, but it's like I almost didn't realize that after Alistair came over to the UFC and he ended up fighting Lesnar, and we all know what happened. Wow, that was like devastation. But I was still amazed at the number of fans that didn't give Overeem even half a chance going into that fight to begin with. And it's not their fault. It's just it's due to their lack of exposure of Alistair's fights and in his overall career. Lots of stuff happened before he came over to the UFC, as all the hardcore purists know. But anyway, it's like I didn't realize that he won 3 heavyweight titles in 2010, and now that he's been kind of matched up against Junior Dos Santos coming up here for the UFC heavyweight title, there's a really good chance that if he wins that fight, that he'll be the most decorated mixed martial arts fighter in the history of the sport. And it doesn't even really matter what weight class either, because you're talking about 4 major titles and 4 major organizations. It's strange, it's just the guy's on a roll. It seems like every fighter, during the course of their career hits that point where they're like clicking on all cylinders, and it's like they can do no wrong. Nick Diaz is one of those guys. It's been like that for a while. Alistair, leading up to his UFC debut, had been on quite a roll. So it's just, I think it's that right now was the perfect time for him to enter the UFC because of where he is in his career right now. It's that he finally grew into the fighter that he was supposed to be, and wow, I can't believe that I didn't pick up on that a little bit earlier than I did. But yeah, if he beats JDS, when they end up fighting for this title coming up, and he ends up winning, yeah, it's going to be hard to deny, that he's the man, regardless of whether or not it's the heavyweight division or not. So it'll be interesting. I can't wait. As I published this article earlier in its written form, I already had somebody say that the Dos Santos fight is actually a bad matchup for Overeem, and that's kind of odd. Of course, that raises a lot of questions in itself, because Overeem has won the K1 title, which is that's arguably like the most prestigious title that you can win in like striking. sports, or that portion of combat sports. If you want to throw kickboxing into the equation, it's a lot different than MMA. But it's just I always try to look at everything balanced. Is that I literally look at it that as this sport evolves, there are just so many people out there that it really can be in any given Sunday type of scenario at any given event. So there's just so much talent. It's like and fans and purists can argue that it's proportionate and it's subjective to each weight class, and they're right. They're 100% correct. One can argue that 155 is the most competitive division in all of mixed martial arts, and the heavyweight division is arguably the least competitive in all of mixed martial arts. But still, I mean, even to take that completely out of the equation, if you look at Strikeforce heavyweight champ, Dream heavyweight champ, K1 World Grand Prix champ, and then potentially UFC heavyweight champ. That's just, those are statistics that are just hard to deny. And and I didn't write this article because I'm the biggest Alistair Overeem fanboy or anything in that. I'm blowing his horn because he's doing well. Now, I've been a fan of his for quite some time, and it was before he came over to the UFC. And I wrote an article back in August of a top 10 list of all the fighters that fought outside of the UFC that I'd like to see come in to the UFC, and what kind of impact they would make in their respective divisions. Alistair Overeem was at the top of my list, and the funny thing about it is that in that article I also kind of like made a wish that he fought Brock Lesnar. And I said that would be a huge fight, and I was given a New Year's present early when he actually was matched up against him in his UFC debut, and to see that he did so well and that he won so convincingly was it was awesome. It was one of those moments during the course of the year where I like actually jumped out of my seat and was like screaming and yelling. It was crazy. But anyway, those are just my thoughts and on Overeem and where he stands currently, in the heavyweight ranks. Personally, I think he deserves to be right where he's at. I think that fighting Dos Santos is the next logical step. I'm happy for him. I'm glad that he won his UFC debut convincingly. I'm not real happy about Brock Lesnar retiring. I think that when you haven't even reached or barely scratched double digits in your entire career is not quite large enough of a scale to judge your whole career by. I think he still had some fights left in him, in other words. And of course, we all know that he's a huge draw. And people tune in to see him win or lose because he always comes to compete. He always comes to win. So anyway, this is kind of the first edition. Hope to do a lot more of these. Actually, I'm going to do a lot more of these, so I hope you get used to them. This is James. I'll see you next time. See you guys.